Hey everybody, this is Dave Dahl from Martin Guitar. Welcome to another edition of Pro Tips. As you can see, I'm joined on my left with my friend Matt, who is the manager of the customer service area. Also have another guest with us here today. We would like to go over probably the biggest thing that you could do to help your guitar survive. Most important thing, absolutely. And one of those things that a lot of people don't really think about when they buy a guitar, and that's humidity. It's a huge important factor in keeping your guitar safe. Now, we've talked about humidity a little bit before and kind of the range and everything, but what we wanted to kind of show today is exactly the things to look for when the guitar starts to be affected. And specifically, right now, this time of year here, we're getting into winter, so we brought a guitar along to kind of show all of the effects that a guitar that's drying out sort of shows. So, as you can see, there's a little bit of a crack here.
A little bit.
Yeah, and what people fail to realize...
Did you just cut yourself on a sharp fret there?
I did earlier, yeah. What people fail to realize is that the crack isn't really the first thing that happens. You know, they're like, well, my guitar has a crack. Why did this happen? I have 15 other guitars and they don't have a crack in it.
They're all fine.
Yeah, they're all fine, but they don't realize that the crack is actually the last thing that happens to a guitar.
I mean, every guitar is going to react a little bit differently, and I highly recommend that you monitor each individual guitar, whether they're Martins or any other brand. They're all going to react differently. Some of the first things you're going to notice is something like sharp frets on the side. You'll notice that the frets will get a little bit sharp. You might notice the finish gets a little bit more dried in. And Dave's absolutely correct. A crack like this isn't going to happen until it's honestly a little bit too late, probably. I mean, it can be fixed.
It can absolutely be fixed.
But that's when you know it's too late. And
I mean, all of these things that you mentioned are all a product of the wood shrinking. You know, the sharp fret ends, the fingerboard shrinks. You know, as long provided it's a wooden fingerboard, and the metal obviously shrinks and expands at a different rate, so the fret ends are going to stick out a little bit. The top sinking down, again, everything is shrinking. So in that, you may also notice, like, wow, why is my guitar buzzing so much, right? That's usually one of the first things.
Action.
You hear people that say, you know, oh, I have a winter saddle and I have a summer saddle. All that tells me is you're not monitoring the humidity because the top's going up and down and up and down and up and down. And all of that stress is going to, you know, your finish is going to get stressed, your braces might come loose, the bridge might come loose, and then, you know, all of our tops are two pieces, so it's going to find the area that's the path of least resistance, and you'll get a crack. Typically it happens down here, but it could happen in some other places as well.
I always think of the guitar too as like a sponge. You know, when a sponge is wet, it's going to blow up, and a lot of times people that over-humidify their guitar, it will sound very muffled and it will sound muted almost, and they'll say, why does my guitar not sound as good as it used to? And that's when you have too much humidity. That would be more so down south, or if you live along a river or something like that, or in Australia or somewhere.
Surrounded by an ocean.
Surrounded by an ocean. Right. You know, we're going into the winter right now, and this is what happens around our areas and east and stuff.
Every year.
The heat kicks on, starts getting dried out.
The forced air heat. Forced air heat in a house or a fireplace, something like that, will immediately
I have this beautiful fireplace. I like to hang my guitar on the mantle.
Yeah, super pretty until this happens. You know, the thing with drying out as well, I kind of tell people that if you're walking around your house with your nose all stuffed up because of the humidity, your guitar probably feels the same way. You know, that the heat and the air and the lack of humidity, the lack of moisture in the air definitely affects the guitar the same way as it affects you. You also did mention something earlier about, you know, not every guitar is the same. Correct. Right? So if you have, you know, 10 other guitars in your room, you know, and you think you're running an in-room humidifier and all 10 of those guitars are fine, that's most likely not the case. Now, you may have one that cracks because it's so dry, but, you know, if you're running it at, say, you're trying to keep it at 50% humidity, right? You're running the entire room at 50%. Well, 50% might be too much for a couple of guitars. It may be fine for a couple other ones, and then it may be too little for some of the other guitars, and they all react a little bit differently. You know, every piece of wood is its own kind of thing.
It was a living thing at one time.
Exactly. So, you know, you might have, you'll have a guitar that in 50% humidity that looks like this, and you'll have one next to it in 50% humidity that looks completely fine. but if you switch the two and put one in high humidity and one in low humidity, they might be fine. Switch them again, you're going to have that one dried out and the other one over humidified. So you got to kind of find the sweet spot in this.
What I recommend is a hygrometer. Keep the hygrometer where you store the guitar. If you keep your guitar in a case, put the hygrometer in a case. If you keep your guitar in a guitar stand, put it next to the guitar. Every guitar is going to be a little bit different, and people always call in and say, I keep my guitar humidified. What they don't realize is you need to know what your humidity actually is. Just because you say it's humidified, you need to know what the reading is. It needs to be between 45 and 55% humidity.
So the thing to keep in mind with a hygrometer, though, is I kind of liken it to a dictionary, you know what I mean? So yes, even though you have that range of 45 to 55%, that doesn't mean that every guitar is going to be perfect as long as it's in that range. There's still that high and low, right? So you look at a dictionary to find out how to spell a word sometimes, right? But you still have to have an idea of how to spell the word before you can find the specifics of it. So
it's a good guideline.
Right. So the good thing with this, the way that you should really be using it is the things that we mentioned earlier. Keep an eye on the action, the frets, all of those other things. And if you start to see those start still happening, say your hygrometer is reading 47%, but you're like, oh man, my action's still getting lower than it was yesterday, and I can kind of feel the sharp fret ends, you need to bump it up. So if that changes again, now you're like, oh my God, my action's getting higher. I can kind of feel the fingerboard, the sides of the fingerboard sticking out past the neck. Right. Everything's swelling. You got to bring it down a little bit. And then you kind of find out what that sweet spot is that you need to keep this instrument. That's where those really come in handy, and that's actually the proper way to actually use them.
So two of the humidifiers that we recommend and we actually carry in our 1833 shop are the Kaiser. This one goes in your sound hole, and the Oasis, which also goes in your sound hole. They work a little bit differently. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how they work.
Yeah, just like with everything else that it seems like we do, right? There's no be-all, end-all with this. And I've talked about this in other videos, but with a guitar, if you're in a really dry environment and the guitar needs a lot of extra attention, the Kaiser Lifeguard works really well for that because it closes off the sound hole. It forces the body to drink. And the body typically is what needs the moisture the most. This, however, may be sometimes a little bit too efficient for other guitars, and some guitars may need to breathe a little bit more. Something like the Oasis or those snake type of things, or the ones that kind of just go in between the strings, they might work really well. But again, there's no be-all, end-all. Don't just buy 20 of one thing and say, I'm humidifying all of my guitars, because they're not always going to work the same. If it's in the case, sometimes in a really dry environment, you need to use the Kaiser in the sound hole and then maybe use something else in the case up by the headstock to take care of the case, which is usually wood.
It's one thing you got to remember, not all cases are made out of plastic.
Right.
A lot of them are made out of wood, so they'll absorb the moisture as well.
Right. So admittedly, it is a little bit of work to actually do this, but think about it. The money that you spend on these products, you want to keep them safe. You do not want to have this happen. And again, I make fun of it all the time. These are the kinds of things you want to keep your guitar away from me. Unless you want to just come over and show, hey, look at this really nice guitar that I got. You want to try to keep it away from me, just like any other doctor, right? The doctor will tell you all the things to keep you healthy, but it will be there if you need help. But the doctor doesn't really want to see you. So that's kind of the same idea here.
Well, that's just it too. It's just like yourself. You need to take care of yourself.
Right.
Our limited lifetime warranty does cover manufacturing defects and defects in materials, but you are responsible for taking care of it, on your own.
And since you brought that up, these are all environmental things. So, again, with the warranty being manufacturer defect and defect in material, this is all strictly environmental, so the warranty would be kind of taken out at that point. So I'd just like to take a second to thank Matt for coming out and helping explain what to look for when the guitar starts drying out. Again, when you get into the winter seasons, these are really things that you want to kind of look out for. If you do notice that your guitar is starting to show some of these effects, please don't hesitate to contact customer service. Again, we have the repair shop at the facility. You can also check out any of our warranty centers to kind of help you out with this. If you have questions, again, contact customer service, and we'll try to keep these guitars running as healthy as they possibly can so they withstand the test of time. Exactly. So.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Thanks.